Are you a creator looking to start your own online business? Or maybe you've been doing this for a while and you've realized that now you have a business, but you're overwhelmed by the process of it being a business and all the little details. In this episode, I'm going to share my must-do checklist for starting an online business. So this is for the creator, the entrepreneur, because that's what you are, or for a small business as well. So if you're ready to take the plunge and get your business up and running, let's go through my checklist. Now, I'm going to hurry and quickly mention before I start going through this, I have actually just started. I have 3 businesses, okay? I know I'm kind of crazy, but I have 3 businesses, and the third one just barely started at the 1st of January of 2023. And so I am in the process of working through this checklist myself. So I want to make sure that you have this as well. And sometimes you can go in more depth with all these things, but these are like the must-dos that I think are must-dos. Everybody's different. So determine what risk you want to take in certain things or what you feel most comfortable in. Everybody's going to say something slightly different, but these are like basic guidelines. These are kind of the essential ones when it comes to opening a business, starting a business, or maybe even realizing that you were just doing this part-time as a hobby and realizing, oh, this is a business. I need to start making those steps. And that's actually where I started with my very first business. It was a hobby at first, and then I had to transition into the business mindset. And so if that's where you're at, or if you're just starting a business, or you want to make sure that you didn't miss anything, this checklist is perfect for you. And as a side note, it's a free checklist that I'm sharing with you. You just have to sign up for the community, and there's a link to that in the description below. So let's try and jump into this. So the first thing that you need to do is determine your niche. So what are you going to be doing? And I am guessing that you probably already know this, but I want you to dig a little deeper. And this is something that I realized that you kind of have to adapt as you go along. Things kind of change. You think that you might have what you want to do, but data comes back in that you need to kind of tweak it a little bit. So don't be afraid to tweak as well. And then after that, you're going to pick a name. Now, this one people get held up on a lot. Like, you think it has to be perfect. It's got to be whatever, whatever, whatever. The thing is that could be holding you back from just moving forward, and that is in itself is not a good thing. But here are some things that I recommend you do. There's a couple things. Make sure it's easy to say, and you can say it out loud. It's really good to do that. And if you can include keywords in the name as well, that is a very good thing as well for SEO purposes. And if you don't know what SEO is, come back next week. We're talking about SEO. I'm doing a whole series on it because it is so important. But anyways, back to this checklist on starting a business. You want to make sure it's easy to say out loud, because if you can't say it, if it's awkward for you, then you're going to have a hard time promoting it. So make sure you can say it out loud. So for example, 2 Feet First Entrepreneur, I had a really hard time saying 2 feet first for a really long time because that's my first business. But I finally just have kind of come to terms with it. But you just got to be able to like roll off the tongue. Entrepreneur is not ideal. I'm going to say that because it's difficult to spell, but it's also a key word. So you just kind of have to decide. With that though, once you do decide on something, you're probably maybe not going to get it. And I'm going to tell you why. That is because you need the domain for it. So you're going to go to the domain hosting. I like to use Google Domains for mine because I use Google for lots of things. And so I go to Google Domains and see if that name is actually available. A lot of the time, you're going to have to go back to the drawing board. And so don't be discouraged. It took me in my last business about 2 months to come up with the name. And that it wasn't holding me back because I was working on other things at the same time. But if your name is holding you back, you just need to move forward. I actually just experienced this with my sister who's starting her own business, and she has been trying to pick a name for over a year. I'm not joking, over a year. And I feel like it's held her back because she doesn't dare to start her website. She doesn't dare to do all these things because she couldn't figure out her name. We finally figured it out for her. I told her, you just got to go with it and move on after a while. So just keep going at it. Maybe you can use a nickname that people have for you. Maybe you can just use numbers. Maybe you can just use a word. You want it to be kind of short, but also easy to say, easy to understand, keywords in it. My name, 2 Feet First, is not easy to understand, so learn from my mistakes. Yes, I could go back and change it, but at this point, I don't think it's worth it. So, just as a side note, after that, you're going to purchase the domain and you're going to get the social handles for that. Now, social handles are going to be Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you want to be sharing. And that doesn't mean like right now, that means eventually. So you'll probably want a Twitter account. You're probably going to want LinkedIn, whatever your people, wherever your people are, you want to have social handles in those areas. So make sure you go there and get them before someone else takes them from you. And as a side note, it could be taken and you need to put something on it like blog, or for example, my current business that I'm just starting, I had to put app on it because the name itself was taken. So I added the app onto it because that's what it is. So just get kind of creative if you need to. I've seen people do underline, lines, dashes, whatever. So get creative if you do need to, but make sure you do get those socials now, even if you're not going to use them. Next, you're going to set up your work email. And I'm going to be very specific here. Work email, okay? I recommend using Google Workspace. It is paid though, and it is minimum. I think it's like $7. Don't quote me on that. You'll have to look for it. I'll link to that too. To start with it, per month, but you can link it to Gmail, which it is a Gmail. The Workspace does go with a Gmail, but you can link it to a free Gmail account. But that's more, we're going to have a full tutorial on that on YouTube sometime. But the thing is, the reason why I wanted to specify work email is you do not want an @gmail.com. You want @yourdomain.com or whatever it is, .co, whatever it is. Mine is .net for one of mine, like whatever it is, you want and your domain .whatever. That is your work email. It can be hello it can be your name whatever you want, but the domain, your domain that you just purchased, is in that email address. And the reason why I say this is because I cannot tell you how many times I'll get emails from people, and you might have experienced this too, or you've seen it. And if it has an @Gmail, I don't take them seriously. To me, they're not a serious business. And so guess what happens? I'm deleting their email because it's not worth my time. If they're not taking the steps to look like an actual business, I'm deleting it. And so I just want to encourage you to not have @gmail.com. It should be @domain.com. And hopefully I can get that video out soon on how to do this for free. But I do recommend Workspace. It's super inexpensive. I consider inexpensive, but it's also easy because I would recommend using Google anyways. So there you go. The next one. This one to me is so important. And you have to have those other things already in place to get to this one. And this one is so important because it protects you personally. Now, this is an LLC. So this is a limited liability corporation. That's what it stands for. So LLC. And this is just protecting your personal assets against the business. So the business, you're saying the business is itself, its own thing, and you are separate from it. So if somebody, heaven forbid this ever happens, but if somebody tries to sue you, your business, And if you have an LLC, they cannot come after your home. They would just be attacking the business itself. But there's other things with that too. But the first step is LLC to get you separated. And there's other things that we're going to talk about too that help separate that even more. But the LLC is the first step. I know that some states to get an LLC does cost a pretty penny, but in most states it doesn't. In my state, I think it was $89 for the whole year. So, and then the renewal is not even that much. So just check it out, see how much it costs you. You can do this yourself, or you can hire somebody to create this yourself. I actually hired somebody for my just recent business because I was pressed for time and I didn't want to work or worry about it. And also because I wanted, when you do an LLC, you have to specify a registered agent. And this registered agent is who people contact if they want to sue the business, if they have questions about the business, like stuff like that, like all of that. So if you don't want your personal address on the LLC showing, then you will want a registered agent. And that's what I did. I can link to who I use, but I'm going to provide that in the checklist. Actually, most of this is just going to be in the checklist because it's going to be so much easier to link everything there. So I'll just link to the checklist and then everything will be linked inside the checklist. So I did a registered agent with mine, and I think that service for a full year, it was about $125 for me in this business. Plus I had them do the filing of the LLC and the federal. So you also need to get an EIN number from federal. And this is only if you're in the United States. I'm assuming that you're in the United States. I don't know what it's like outside of the United States. So this is what I do inside the United States. So you need a EIN number. That way you do not have to use your Social Security number. Okay, so your EIN number. And this comes into play because you're a creator. Okay, if you want to have work for a company, sponsored, whatever it might be, sometimes they do require you to have your Social Security number, but you can usually give them this EIN number. Okay, so that's along with it too. And I'm going to write that down because I did not have that number in here. So you need that too when you're registering with your state. And then the next step is determining if you have to register with your city. Now, every city's different. My city requires it. And so all I had to do was just say that I'm an at-home business. Nobody comes to my house, so they didn't have to come out or anything. They just approved me within like 5 minutes. So it can be as simple as that. It might be more of a process, but look into it. Not all cities require you to specify, basically register as a business in your city. So look that up as well. The next step, okay, these are all in order, remember? The next step is setting up a bank account for your LLC. You are doing this to remove as much liability from you personally. If you're using your personal credit card or your bank account to pay for these expenses that you're incurring as a creator, as an entrepreneur, that makes you liable because it's coming from your personal account. It's showing that you're connected to the business. Now, if you have a business account, then the business is liable. I hope you're seeing the benefit from that. There's different ways that you can do this, but the way that I recommend doing it is reading the book Profit First. I actually have a podcast about this. I don't remember what one it is, but I'll link to it about why I use Profit First. It's a book. It's wonderful. It's fabulous. And just set it up the way they tell you to in the book. I won't go into details. I go into details on that podcast. So look at that. Next is creating your bookkeeping system. There's so many things out there that you can use, paid, free, whatever. Find what works for you and just go with it. And you might have to tweak it over time. I personally I created my own spreadsheet. Oh my gosh, years and years ago. when I first started, because I was unwilling to pay where I was making pennies, right? I can't afford another service on top of something else. So I made my own spreadsheet. And if you're wondering, I'm going to be selling this spreadsheet. I am not an accountant. I'm going to tell you that up front. I'm not a CPA, anything like that, but it works for me. I mimicked when I did it. It's similar to like a general accounting ledger. And to give you kind of some backstory with that, I was going to be an accountant when I went to school. And so I took accounting classes. And so I mimicked what I learned inside my accounting classes. Again, I am not a CPA, so make sure you talk to your CPA too with how you should have your spreadsheet, your workbook system in place. The next step is setting up your website. Now, this is the fun part. You kind of want to jump to this, and I'm going to be honest. Once you get your domain name, the LLC, the bookkeeping stuff, the bank account, it kind of takes some time because you file for your LLC, you don't get it back for a few days. So you can skip ahead to this one and start your website, but don't make it live. There's some things that you need to do in it before you make it live. So just start making it all pretty. And there are so many things out there. When I first started, it was really just WordPress. And so that's what I know. And that's what I use for all my businesses because that's where I started. There is now like Squarespace. I know somebody that uses their Etsy shop because it has pages on it as their website. They have blog posts on there and stuff like that. So you can get creative. I've seen people use their course membership. So it'd be like Kajabi is the one I can think of right now. But they use that as their website. So you can get creative and that way you can kind of eliminate some of the things, but also some of those do have some drawbacks on limiting you being able to do certain things. So I do recommend like WordPress or Squarespace. Squarespace already has the hosting built into it. WordPress itself is free. Make sure it's not the .com but .org that you're doing. But what you have to do is get a hosting first. You have to get your host, which is going to host your website. But I haven't used a lot of these. I have been with my current one for a while, so I'll link to that one if you're interested in that. And my new business, I tried something completely different. And if you are not a coder or anything like that, I'm not going to recommend it to you. It's an Amazon Lightcell is the one I'm using right now for my new business. And I did it because we're doing an app and I wanted everything in one place, but it was a lot more work setting up than any other hosting service I've used, but I got it to work. It's fine. It's cheap, which is great, but I also have a developer to help me. So don't start there unless you know that world. I'm going to just put it there. So the things that are important on your website, though, that we need to talk about is you need to ensure that you have legal terms and conditions, disclosures, privacy policies. And I am going to recommend, if you're just starting out, to just buy a template from a lawyer. I'll link to the one that I just used. When you start making more money, I do recommend you finding a lawyer and having them review your terms and your privacy policy and updating it and adding all the things in for your site personally. So I'm going to just put that out there, but make sure you have your legal terms. It baffles me, some of the websites that don't have this. This protects you. So make sure you do that too. Another protection. When you're also building your website, I like to recommend that you use StoryBrand. If you have not heard of this, it's another book. It's Donald Miller. He is the one that wrote this, and it helps you build a website that tells your audience exactly what you're about. And it helps them navigate through your website easily. With that too, this is going to be next week's stuff, the SEO stuff that I was telling you about. But you want to also think about what you're linking to in that. So make sure you come back for next week's series on the SEO stuff, because we're going to talk more about your website structure. And I don't think that's next week. I think that's the following week. It's like the number 2 of the SEO one, so come back for that. Next, you're going to want to make sure your images are optimized. And again, we're going to talk about this in SEO, but essentially what it is optimized means that you're condensing down the image so that it can load quicker. So the site speed is faster. So you want to make sure you're compressing this. I will link to the one that I use for free for Macs. There are online ones for PCs and Macs, but I like to do it directly on my computer. I just drag and drop stuff into it and it automatically compresses it for me. You can also have inside of WordPress, there are themes, which is what your website looks like, and there's plugins, which does like backend stuff for you. And I also have a plugin that optimizes images as well on there. And I will link to the plugins that I recommend and the theme that I'm currently using inside this checklist as well. Then after that, you're going to set up pages on your website. So the important ones are like home, about, contact, the privacy disclosure terms, and then your services and shop. And so make sure you kind of those are like the basic ones that you're going to kind of worry about setting up first. After your website, and I mean, again, these are kind of in conjunction with each other, but you're going to set up an email provider for newsletters. So this is where your people will sign up on your website on a form to be notified on things or get freebies or things like that. Like when you are getting this checklist, you are signing up to my community, my newsletter for my business. So make sure you set up something like that. And next is set up files system. Okay. This is so important to do in the beginning. It helps you not be so disorganized. And I have a podcast episode about organizing your files. I think I have it, it's just recent, but I'll look at that and link to it as well. But basically what you're doing is creating a file system, and this is going to be an email, your digital files, anywhere, so that it's easy to find stuff. It's a thing that I recommend to everyone. If you are been in a business for a while, make sure you are doing that as well. So once you have your files in place, you're going to want to start doing welcome sequences for your email subscribers and make sure that you start selling your products. And I'm going to stop here on the list because that's kind of the basic stuff. There you can do more in depth again. You can get continuous stuff, which I'm going to list that in the checklist as well. But the basics of setting up your business were those ones that we just kind of talked about, the really important ones, the ones that actually set you apart as a business. So make sure you do those. And don't feel overwhelmed by it. I know that it can be daunting. I know it can seem very overwhelming, but if you just follow this checklist and make sure you're kind of checking stuff off, and I'm going to encourage you to view other resources, continue learning about starting a business, because again, this is basic level. Down at the very bottom, there's more advanced stuff. But just starting out, these are things that you can do that every business has to do. So that's essentially why I'm telling you these things. So take action today. Sign up for getting this checklist to make sure you're not missing anything, and you can check stuff off as you're going along and see all the links I'm providing in there. Also, just enjoy the journey, because it really is a journey. We have ups and we have downs, but that's what we're here for. I'm here to help you. So if you have questions, be sure to reach out to me. And with that, I am going to just encourage you to start your business, download the checklist.